Okay, what you're looking at right there is Rigel, which is about maybe a half an hour for culmination. The 800 series is way too far west. In fact, I went to NGC 810 once again, and the scope was partially blocked, and it was in areas plus 15 degrees. So we're not going to catch any more of the 800 series this evening. I can only hope we'll have a good night of seeing tomorrow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that NGC 1000 is in good viewing position, and I'm just going to go ahead and go through the 1000 to 1049 series and save it for later or use it for another Mathematica Galactica sequence. So there is our view of Rigel. It's centered up nicely. An hour later, right now the time is 8:36 and 33 seconds. Well, as it turned out, to get anything that's near culmination, and actually I'm post-culminatory right now, I had to skip to NGC 1600. So we're going to have a look at the NGC 1600 series, and maybe, just maybe, it'll be replaced later, but the night is so good, and I do want to capture some of these galaxies. This is NGC 1600, a galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 10.9, 3.1 by 2.2, arc-minute obliquely presented elliptical class 2 spiral, 209 million light years distant, puts this beautiful galaxy at maybe 200,000 light years across, very large for an elliptical. We're at right ascension hour 4:31:39, minus 5 degrees declination, and look how wonderful that view is of NGC 1600, magnitude 10.9. NGC 1601 should have been visible on the 1600 screen. It's a fainter galaxy to the right. It's magnitude 13.8, also in Eridanus, 0.6 by 0.3 arc minutes. It's a lenticular spiral, 222 million light years distant. Once again, we're at about minus 5 degrees in declination, and both 1600 and 1601 are visible nicely on the screen. Okay, here we have NGC 1604, a galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 14.5, 1 by 0.7 arc minutes, lenticular spiral, 202 million light years distant, and it is probably very close to 1601 and 1600. We may have very well have found another nice galaxy group. 1604 is magnitude 14.5, 1 by 0.7 arc minute lenticular spiral, 202 million light years distant, slightly further south at 5 and almost a half degrees in declination. Ideally, we can see the other galaxies on the screen, although I didn't get a chance to watch for the shift. NGC 1605 is an open cluster in Perseus faintish, and we're also getting some obstruction of the lens. Maybe 50% of the aperture is lost on this. Open cluster Perseus, faint, magnitude 10.7, 5 arc minutes in size with maybe 40 stars, and the brightest of which are magnitude 12.5. You can see them sprinkled around here in the middle of the screen. And once again, they look very faint, primarily due to the obstruction of the scope. This open cluster's got about 40 stars. The brightest is 12.5. It's a widely spaced class 3-1, which means all the stars are roughly of the same magnitude, but they're spread out a bit on the screen. A little hard to believe that, except that probably they're basing that class 3 Latin on the calculated distance. This is a distant cluster, 8,300 light years distant, and we're at plus 45 and change degrees in declination, and there's a sprinkling of stars all over. Do not expect to see anything here. This is probably the faintest galaxy I've encountered in the NGC catalog. NGC 1606 is a galaxy in Eridanus. It's also fairly far south, 5 degrees south of the celestial equator. This is a magnitude 17 galaxy, 0.4 by 0.4 arc minutes, spiral with a bar, also lenticular, and an A, so it's about a half step removed from a pure lenticular. 429 million light years distant means this baby's probably somewhere around 75 to 80,000, 60 to 70,000 light years in diameter. As mentioned, we're at -5, and if there's a galaxy on this screen, it's right there where we expect to see it. Faint but visible, if indeed that is actually the galaxy. And of course, there's a much brighter, larger version of a galaxy right there. So magnitude 17, usually 16.5, and that's overhead. Wow, it is a spectacular night, if indeed that is our NGC 1606. Right, NGC 1607 is 2 magnitudes brighter at magnitude 15. It's a galaxy in Eridanus. It's 1 by 0.4 arc minutes in size, so oblitely presented spiral of the lowercase a, which means once removed from a lenticular. 190 million light years distant. We're at -4.5 degrees. And this 15th magnitude galaxy is quite apparent on the screen. If indeed it is visual magnitude, it may very well be possible that we did turn up a 17th magnitude galaxy in NGC 1606. NGC 1608 is also NGC 1593. It's a galaxy in Taurus, our first view. However, there are probably plenty of other ones in Taurus that we just skipped over in jumping to the 1600 series. It's also NGC 1593, magnitude 13.4, 1.6 by 0.6 arc minute. Lenticular spiral, 167 million light years distant, probably about 100,000 light years in diameter. We are right on the celestial equator. And the magnitude on this 13.4, it's pretty present on the screen right there. But remember, the light's being spread out. It's a little larger than the ones we've seen earlier. NGC 1609 is another galaxy in Eridanus. I believe that's the river. Magnitude 15, 1.1 by 0.7 arc minutes, so largest for a magnitude 15 galaxy in terms of apparent size, but it's only 192 million light years distant, which means probably somewhere around 65,000 light years in diameter. We're at -4 and almost 0.5 degrees in declination. We are getting a good view of the screen and the galaxy, this 15th magnitude galaxy. NGC 1610 is also NGC 1619. It's a galaxy in Eridanus, faint, magnitude 16.1, 0.6 by 0.4 arc minutes, 207 million light years distant at almost 5 degrees in declination. I can see a faint galaxy right there. And remember, this is a full magnitude, almost a full magnitude brighter than the 17th one we saw before, and yet this one is unmistakable. So we are getting some pretty fine views on this spectacular post 4-day full moon, which of January, I believe it's the 29th at about 9 o'clock in the evening. Some great views. NGC 1611 is another galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 15, but largest, 2 by 0.6 arc minutes. You can certainly see it's distended in the middle of the screen. It's a spiral class lowercase a, which means once removed from a lenticular, 190 million light years distant, puts this at about 110,000 light years in diameter. We're at -4 and change degrees declination, and getting a good view of a 15th magnitude galaxy right on the celestial equator. Another galaxy not too far from 1611 is NGC 1612 in Eridanus. Magnitude 15, 1.3 by 1 arc minutes in size. Spiral of the lowercase a, once removed from lenticular, 219 million light years distant. And we're at -4 and change degrees. And the other galaxy we just looked at, I believe, that was more edgy on, is right over there, and that would have been NGC 1611. Same screen, good views. Not too far from 1612 is NGC 1613, another galaxy in Eridanus, also magnitude 15, but more football shape, 1 by 0.8 arc minutes. A once removed from lenticular S spiral of class A, 200 million light years distant, -4 and change degrees in declination. We're at hour 4, 33 minutes and 25 seconds in right ascension. And you can see other galaxies right there. I believe these are the other ones we just recently turned up on the Rev 2 display screen. NGC1614 is another galaxy in Eridanus, but this one's brighter, magnitude 12.9, almost face-on, 1.3 by 1.2 arc minutes, spiral with a bar and peculiarities. 212 million light years distant, minus 8.5 degrees in declination. And I see a little bit of weirdness in this galaxy, some faintness away from the core, which may refer to its peculiarities. I recommend going to theskylive.com and typing in NGC1614 to see your own better image of it through the 48-inch Schmidt camera used at the Palomar Observatory in the 1940s and 50s to compile the digital, the basis for the digital sky survey displayed there. Here's looking at you, kid. Those two stars right there. NGC1615 is a galaxy in Taurus, magnitude 13.6, quite obvious on the screen, 1.2 by 0.8 arc minutes, lenticular spiral, 153 million light years distant, probably something around 75,000 light years in diameter. We're at plus almost 20 degrees in declination and getting a nice view of this galaxy in Taurus, the bull. NGC1618 is a galaxy in Eridanus. Magnitude 12.7 really does not punch very well. 2.4 by 0.8 arc minutes, so it should be a 4-to-1 aspected spiral with a bar in lowercase b. Oh yeah, I see the extensions going off left and right now. 2 removed from a lenticular at 218 million light years in distance. We're at minus 3 and change degrees. The galaxy is coming out a little better as we continue the exposure time. To the optimized exposure time is 45 seconds, but I rarely ever push it to that, simply because I've got to cover so many studies. There's only so much power in the batteries, and these videos are running over 30 minutes as it is, which is quite extensive. So, but that's a very good look. I'm doing everything I can to give it a chance to fully develop on the screen. This is NGC1620. I'm really happy that I took the time to determine the relative brightnesses of various galaxies in terms of their B, V, J, H, K bands, because one of the things I've been trying to compare them to is how mature the galaxies are. And I've used another method, the M31 comparison method. There'll be convergences there. But what I'm saying about it is that in so doing, I recognize that the Hubble Divoculaires morphological descriptions of galaxies are pretty well laid out from left to right. NGC1620 is a galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 12.3, 2.9 by 1 arc minute. It's a spiral with a lowercase c. A is once removed, B is twice removed, C is 3 times removed from a lenticular. If it's lowercase, it tends to the upper part of the Hubble Divoculaire catalog. And if it's uppercase, in other words, if it were an S capital C, it would be on the pitchfork, tuning fork to the bottom, which basically points out differences in morphology that I have to look into more, but this is a really nice view of NGC 1620. And we are pretty much close to the celestial equator with it. I've given it a good chance to develop itself fully. NGC 1620. NGC 1621 is a galaxy in Eridanus. It's also NGC 1626. I'll skip it when I get there. Magnitude 14.5, 1.4 by 0.8 arc minute elliptical, so it's probably a class 6 elliptical. 199 million light years distant, and it's minus almost 5 degrees in declination. Galaxy is quite visible on the screen. It does look quite distended in its aspect ratio. So there we go, NGC 1621. here we have a nicely aspected NGC1622 galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 12.5, 3.7 by 0.7 arc minutes. So pretty much a 5-to-1 ratio. Now this is a complicated galaxy. It's a spiral with a bar, which means a capital AB. It's at the top of the tuning fork, but it's an AB, lowercase ab, which means halfway between an A and a B. So if we were going through our degrees of removal from a lenticular to the right, it would be a 1.5. And there are galaxies that are cataloged in that way. We're at -3 degrees. The galaxy is distending as I speak, so we're getting a very nice view of this 3.7 by 0.75-to-1 aspect ratio complicated galaxy. I have no expectations of seeing this galaxy in Eridanus. It's too far south, almost 14 degrees. NGC 1623 is magnitude 16.9, 0.8 by 0.5 arc minutes. 441 million light years distant puts it at about 125,000 light years in diameter. It's a spiral with a bar, and also a lenticular plus A, so it's a 0.1, 0.5 on the morphological catalog. Now, I'm seeing a galaxy there, so I'll bet you this 16.9 is the blue-violet. And typically, if you are seeing in the visual, it would be 1 magnitude brighter at magnitude 15.9, and on a night like this, we might expect to see it. I'll have to do some research on this if I have time, and share it in captions. NGC1625 is another galaxy in Eridanus. This one's brighter, magnitude 12.3, 2.1 by 0.5 arc minutes, so a 4-to-1 aspect ratio. Spiral with a bar and a lowercase b, 2 points removed on the upper part of the Hubble divoculaires, 212 million light years distant, and we're pretty close to the celestial equator at -3 and change degrees. Galaxy's giving a very nice view of its extensions. Very, very sweet. Boy, what a difference a good dark sky without a moon makes. Skipping NGC 1626 because it was a duplicate of an earlier galaxy. We're at 1627, a galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 13, face on 1.6 by 1.6, but not an elliptical or a lenticular. This is a 3 times removed spiral with a lowercase c, 172 million light years distant, almost -5 degrees in declination. We're getting a pretty good view. It's very faint. The galaxy does not have a particularly distinct core, so no wonder it's 3 times removed from a lenticular. The light just kind of bleeds out into space, but we get to see it. Sweet. And there's another fine edge on over there, which we probably already imaged. I'm so impressed with the views we're getting tonight. This is a 14th magnitude galaxy, but we're seeing the extensions. NGC 1628 is a galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 14, 1.9 by 0.4 arc minutes, so almost a 5-to-1. Spiral, twice removed from a lenticular, lowercase b, 164 million light years distant, almost -5 degrees in declination, and we are seeing some really nice extensions on this NGC 1628. We've gone pretty far south now to NGC 1630 in southern Eridanus for a galaxy of magnitude 14.1, 0.7 by 0.5 arc minute, spiral with a lowercase a, upper part of the diagram, plus 1 from lenticular, 408 million light years distant, probably puts it at about 75,000 light years in diameter. We're at -19 degrees in declination and still getting a decent view of a 14th magnitude galaxy. A little further north, we're at NGC 1631, galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 13.4, 1.5 by 0.9 arc minutes, spiral with a bar, lenticular A, so it's about a 0.5 displaced to the right of the lenticular class galaxies. 420 million light years distant puts it at about 180,000 light years in diameter, so fairly large. minus 20.5 degrees in declination and quite visible on the screen. The sky looks pretty dark, even to the deep south tonight. NGC1632 is another galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 13, 1 by 0.6 arc-minute spiral, once removed lowercase a from lenticular. 222 million light years distant. We're at minus 9.5 degrees in declination. The galaxy is quite visible at magnitude 13, but isn't showing us much in the way of any further detail. NGC1633 is a galaxy further north in Taurus, magnitude 13.5, nearly face-on, 1 by 0.9 arc-minute spiral with a bar and a lowercase ab. When they combine a lowercase a and a b, they're basically saying it's a half step between 1 and 2 times removed from the lenticular class, 219 million light years distant. We're at plus 7 and almost a half degrees in declination, and there certainly seems to be an interesting stellar configuration capping this galaxy of bright stars, probably in the magnitude 11 realm. Well, NGC 1634, as you can see from the configuration of the stars, was very close to 1633. It's a galaxy in Taurus, magnitude 14.1, 0.4 by 0.3 arc minutes. However, it's a lenticular spiral, 204 million light years distant. It's probably going to suck in that other spiral galaxy, and that's how galaxies grow. We're at plus 7 and almost a half degrees in declination. NGC 1635 is a galaxy in northern Eridanus. We're at only a half degree below the celestial equator. It's a nice galaxy. By data, magnitude 12.4, 1.4 by 1.3 arc-minute spiral with a bar, lenticular A, half step removed. It's got a ring, 146 million light years distant. Look for that ring. It should be visible given the fact that we've already seen 16th plus magnitude galaxies in this region before. As I said, we're within about a degree of the celestial equator. Look for the ring and the bar because it's got some extension to it. And there is our look. NGC 1636 seems to be paired with another galaxy. Either are I shifted around. In Eridanus, magnitude 14, 1.2 by 0.9 arc minutes, spiral AB, which means 1.5 steps removed from lenticular, 185 million light years distant, minus 8.5 degrees in declination. And maybe that was just a ghost of another galaxy that we were seeing on the screen, because it seems to be solitary to me now. NGC 1637 should prove to be an interesting galaxy if I talk really slowly and allow it to develop. This is a galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 10.8, football shape, 3.9 by 3.3 arc minutes, so potential for some extensions and details. Spiral with a bar and lowercase c, so it's 3 times removed from lenticular, a mere 33 million light years distant. Smallish galaxy, therefore probably somewhere around 40,000 light years in diameter. We're at minus almost 3 degrees. This galaxy seems to be, it's a spiral with a bar and lowercase c, but it almost looks like it has some annular extensions, although that's pretty much the luminosity from the galaxy that's trailing off on the screen, because there's no indication that NGC 1637 has an annularity around it. But what a nice view. Very peculiar. I said next, and I ended up at NGC 1638. Galaxy in Eridanus, there was hardly any motion on the part of the scope. And I do believe the last one was 1638, so there's a duplicate entry in here, but they are 2 separate galaxies. This galaxy is magnitude 12, 2.3 by 1.6 arc-minute spiral with a bar lenticular class, 147 million light years distant. We're at minus almost 2 degrees in declination. Clearly we're seeing another galaxy. I could be mistaken. The previous galaxy could have been 1637, but I don't think so. But there's no distinction between an A and a B galaxy. Intriguing. I'll have to review this when I go over these videos. Skipping a star, we're now on to NGC1640, a galaxy in deep south Eridanus, minus 20.5 degrees. The brightest galaxy, though, magnitude 11.7, and it's quite apparent on the screen. 2.7 by 2.3 arc minutes, spiral with a B, a bar, and a lowercase ab. So basically 1.5 times removed from a lenticular, 72 million light years distant. We're at minus 20.5 degrees in declination. The galaxy is quite present, despite the fact the screen's a little brighter than we have seen when we were looking further north. NGC 1642 is a galaxy, this time further north than Taurus, but not much above the celestial equator, about a half degree. Magnitude 12.6, 1.8 by 1.6 arc minute, spiral with a lowercase c, so 3 times removed from lenticular class, 207 million light years distant. So there is our look. You can see a brightish core with an expansive aura of faint luminosity around it. And you might want to look to see which side. I think it's to the right and probably the 4 o'clock position where you get the brightest view of the aura, although everything from about 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock is illuminated from my point of view. NGC1643 is another galaxy in Eridanus, but further north at minus 5 and change degrees declination. Brighter, magnitude 14, 1.2 by 1.1 arc minute, spiral with a BC, so 2.5 times removed in terms of its morphology from a lenticular, 215 million light years distant. And there is our look. It's quite apparent on the screen, as most 14th magnitude galaxies we have seen this evening are, under these really clear dark skies, where I would say if I were dark adapted, we might actually see 5.5 magnitude stars unaided without aversion. Although I can see Sirius flashing quite a bit, so there's some atmospheric disturbance going on. NGC 1645 is a galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 14, 2.4 by 1.1 arc minute, a spiral of lowercase a. It has a ring, 214 million light years distant. We will not get a sense of the ring. That is way too faint, because they'll probably be around 18.5 magnitude. We might pick them up down to a magnitude 17, and that require pretty much a 12th magnitude galaxy with a ring, and this one is 2 magnitudes fainter. We're at minus 5.5 degrees in declination. I have 3 bars left on this camera. I may push on into the next series after this if it persists in holding the charge that it is. NGC 1646 is another galaxy in Eridanus, magnitude 14.5, largest for a 14.5, 1.8 by 1 arc minute, lenticular spiral, so 0. So all the ellipticals start at E0, go all the way, I believe, to E7 or 8. Then they become lenticulars, and after that you start to get your A's and your B's and your C's, uppercase or lowercase, depending upon the structure of the spiral extensions. And then you can end up way off to the right with all kinds of weird morphologies called peculiar. NGC 1646 is 214 million light years distant, minus 8.5 degrees in declination. And there's probably several other galaxies on the screen. I can't tell you what that bright star is, but I would say it's probably somewhere around magnitude 9. NGC 1647, taking a break from galaxies, is an open cluster in Taurus. Brightish, magnitude 6.4, 45 arc minutes in size, 200 stars, brightest are magnitude 8.6. It's a class 2-2. So the stars are moderately distributed and they are of moderate brightness variation. This is not the Pleiades. This cluster is located 1,800 light years distant. The Pleiades are much larger, 450 light years distant in general. We are at plus 19 degrees in declination. NGC 1648 is a galaxy in Eridanus. We drop down to about 8.5 degrees southern declination. Magnitude 16, and I am seeing a faint E in there. 0.6 by 0.5 arc-minute lenticular spiral, 210 million light years distant. And keep in mind, anytime a galaxy is less than 1 arc-minute in size, its average surface brightness goes in the brighter direction. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to reveal it, but it does tend to concentrate the light a little bit more, so you're more likely to be able to pick it out if it's not a larger galaxy. For professional telescopy, they measure average surface brightness in arc seconds, and it's typically in the it's in the 22 to 23 magnitude range per arc second of average surface brightness. This galaxy, NGC 1648, is minus 8.5 degrees in declination, and it's pretty clear to me now that we've settled on this for a little bit that we're easily picking out 16th magnitude galaxies on this very fine night of seeing. What we're having here is our Carpe Noctem moment. NGC 1649 was not presented as an option. So what we're looking at here is not an NGC at all. In fact, there are 2 nebulations present on the screen, probably a third if Barnard managed to actually account for some of this image. What we're seeing, of course, is Messier 42 and a neighboring, I believe this is Messier 43, but I can't be sure. It's been a while since I've reviewed these. 42, of course, is the Great Nebula in Orion, which probably should be visible on a good night of seeing. Notice we are not seeing any color in the nebulosity because I am in black and white mode because in black and white mode you can set up IR, light gathering, which is probably, along with this fine night that we just had here on January 29th, Monday, 9 o'clock in the evening, explains why we had such good views of the galaxies in the all the galaxies in the 750 to 799, the 800 to 810, and the 1600 to 1649 series. And the reason why I have pursued all of this tonight is because sidereal time is quickly rotating out. I am no longer able to get any culminating views in the NGC catalog, and by the time the camera recharged and I got out here, the 800 to 849 series was well too far west. I hope you noticed how the screen was over illuminated to begin with, looking at Messier 42, and now with time the camera seems to have adjusted, the Rev 2 unit seems to have adjusted to the brightness. I am not seeing much difference in brightness between the TFT monitor here and the Handycam display screen before me. Now I have to make a choice here whether I want to continue going forward. I got 3 bars on the camera. I could continue with the NGC series, going to NGC 650 to 1699. I probably won't. It's getting late this evening. The time is now 21:30, which I believe is 9:30 local time. But we are having a nice view of Messier 42 in Orion for our Carpe Noctem moment. And I will queue up this NGC 1600 to 1649 series if I can continue to progress through the series over the next week or so. and put it in the series, even though it is now January 29th of 2024. And I wouldn't expect to get to this until maybe 2 to 3 weeks from now. But it's been very worthwhile to move forward. So I am going to say carpe octem.